Shalom. We'll get started here in just a few moments.
And the year of my redeemed is come. Who's the Lord's redeemed? The elect of the nation of Israel. How about that, man? Let's go to Isaiah 66 and 15. Let's continue the terror train. This is the terror, the great terror that our Lord is coming with. As it is written, knowing the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. Knowing the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. That's why we're so valiant out there in the street. That's why we're so valiant in these lessons. So valiant to bring forth this edification and this exhortation, because we know the terror of the Lord. And indeed, the Lord is coming with terror. Yahushua is coming back. He's coming with terror. Let's read it. Isaiah 66 and 15. For behold, the Lord will come with fire. What's his name? Yahushua. Yahushua is coming. For behold, the Lord will come with fire. And where's that fire going to come from? It's going to come from them chariots and the missiles, the nuclear missiles. The nuclear missiles is part of that fire. This is where you get the term the lake of fire that all these morons in these so-called churches hear about and talk about, but cannot fully explain what that means, the lake of fire. So many missiles are going to hit this place called America, along with those chariots, and it's going to turn this place into a lake of fire. That's what it means, the lake of fire. To get an idea of what that's going to be like, all you have to do is watch two movies. Watch the movie called War of the Worlds, which gives you an illustration of what it's going to be like. Watch the 1951, or is it 52 edition? And then watch the one made back in 2005 with Tom Cruise, War of the Worlds. But it's not going to be little green men from Mars. Oh no. It's going to be Yahushua and the angels. Yahushua is coming. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind. Those are the so-called UFOs, which you call them UFOs, but they're the chariots of Israel. With his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. Yahushua is coming. So you have every reason to be afraid. You have every reason to be afraid. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. That's why I love the scriptures, because it's so powerful and direct. It's so impactful. It says what needs to be said.
Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto my power. Yahweh Bashim Yahushua Bashim Hakodash. That's all praises to the Heavenly Father. His true name in the Hebrew is Yahweh. In his son's name, who the world enemy called Jesus Christ, real name in the Hebrew is Yahushua. Also give praises, honor, and glory to the Yahweh Kakodash, the Holy Spirit, which is the force and entity that makes this edification possible. I want to say shalom to our Central Heart of Akim, wa akwat, that you brothers and sisters make your bodies a living sacrifice on a daily basis in this wicked and adulterous generation. I also want to give double honors unto my beloved apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth and who grew well. And I'm the brother Azamawak here from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, coming back this morning through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemal Shah to do another lesson. And Lord's will, this lesson be found edifying to the elect of the nation of Israel, as well as glorifying unto the names of my power, Yahweh by Shemal Shah. And I also want to briefly get into the topic at hand this morning. As you can read the title of the lesson, it says religion, science, medicine, politics, plus Esau equals disaster. All right. Religion, science, medicine, politics, plus Esau equals disaster. All right. And, these few assets, well, not assets, but these few genres, if you will, that I listed: religion, science, medicine, politics. Okay, these are all facets. That's the word I'm looking for. These are all facets, or at least some of the facets that Esau has ultimately utilized in his kingdom. okay, which ultimately makes up the image of the beast, as you read about in Revelation, the 13th chapter. Okay, and the image of the beast is just not solely exclusive unto, all right, the image of Caesar Borgia, okay, or, so-called white Jesus or whatnot. All right, that's a part of it, but it's way bigger than that. Okay, it has a lot of more facets to that, such as his science, his medical system, his politics, bipartisan system. Okay, and all these things is ultimately going to culminate and lead unto the new world order. All right, and you got to be down with every single last facet of his kingdom, which the majority of the people that's living upon the earth, they are down with it. They're down with the image of the beast in some shape, form, or fashion. So you have a lot of Israelites. Okay, they know that the Israelites, all right. And they say, oh, we don't worship a white Jesus. We worship a black Jesus. Well, first and foremost, you still using the name Jesus. Okay. Secondly, all right, you lean upon this man's system in some shape, form, or fashion, such as 2020, you had a lot of Israelites go take that dragon juice. So by default, you're trusting in his medical system, his pseudoscience. And that makes up a part of the image of the beast. Okay. And what prompted, or inspired me to do this lesson, this article here off of End Time Headlines. It says rejecting church and state separation is on the wish list for Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. So you see how they Esau is once again on his hellacious campaign, all right, in the Trump administration to blend and merge, church and state together, which it's always been like that. But as this MOTB is about to be rolled out here within the next few upcoming weeks to months. All right, this is what's going to play a key role and a key factor in that, along, of course, with this technology, this medical system, all these things are going to ultimately be looked into and revered as, salvation. All right, and if you're not down for it, well, you're going to be deemed and classified as an enemy of the state, and you're against the Lord. See, they're going to use that. They're going to use scriptures such as Romans 13, as we're going to get into here in this lesson. They're going to use that to pretty much, classify and deem you as a domestic T. You're not, you know, operating in the country's best interest. You're enemy of the state, and they're going to try to use scriptures to justify that. And this is why you have a lot of spotlight shown up on Trump's religious advisory panel, such as that goddamn demon, Paula White, Paula White the Edomite. All right, well, Paula White the Sheedomite, we'll say that, because saying particular statements such as rejecting Trump is like rejecting the Son of the Most High. Trump, he's the anointed one, he's the chosen one, things like that. And this ain't nothing new. And this is how once again, we're in Rome all over again. All right, because as we're going to get a little info here in this lesson, Lord's willing, it'll be brief but straight to the point. But just as in ancient Rome incorporated emperor worship. You see, and these past few months, Trump has been also in a campaign of erecting, statues of himself, commemoration, memorials of himself. Just like I believe it was last week, he erected this tall ass statue of himself, on in Mar-a-Lago. I remember he had it was a statue called the Bitcoin Trump Bitcoin, big ass golden statue, golden. Keep that in mind, golden. That's spiritual. All right, makes you think of Nebuchadnezzar and his that golden statue in Daniel the 3rd chapter. It also lets you know that this is the golden city that Isaiah the 14th chapter speaks about. But so we see where this thing is headed, and everything is all blended. Man, the Lord is he's a mastermind, bro. He's got all these things in the mixing bowl. It's just one thing after another, but it's all going to culminate for the plans and the counsel of Yahweh Bashmal Shah to come to pass in its perfection. So let's go ahead and get into it real quick. We'll open up with this verse right here, Psalms 36 chapter. Psalms chapter 36 from the top. Wickedness of men and loving kindness of the Most High. Verse 1, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord Yahweh Bashmal Shah. says, the transgression of the wicked saith within my heart that there is no fear of the Most High before his eyes. And by this point, you should know who the wicked is. All right. If not, where and who is he? If Esau, okay, is not the Edomites, if he's not the wicked, where and who is he? Okay. So this is speaking about King David is prophesying about Esau in the spirit, if you can receive it. All right. And if you can't receive it now in the spirit, Esau is going to help you remove all doubt very soon to show you that he's the wicked, to show you that he's the devil that the Bible speaks of. Had this simple ass dread-headed mop head Jake came up to the camp last Tuesday, and he claimed to be a part of GOCC. He said that he just got out of prison. He came up to the camp smoking a cigarette like he was going to teach us something, saying that we ain't got no enemies. Esau ain't the wicked. You know what I mean? Jake is about to find out. Scripture says that in the book of Sirach, the 12th chapter. Okay, it says, when adversity come upon thee, you shall find him there first. And he's going to reveal unto you his wickedness. See? Verse 2, it says, for he flattereth himself in his own eyes until his iniquity be found to be hateful. And that's what Esau is doing. Okay, as he's on his campaign to merge church and state, together even more than what has already been. But, you could just go through, the annals of time and history to see, whenever Esau used the Bible, such as what he's doing right now as he's waging war in the Middle East, is all underneath the guise of what? Religion, belief system, you see? And what comes out of that is destruction, genocide. I didn't mean to say that word, but it is what it is. Okay, that's what that G word comes out of it. You see? So he's bringing all that here to America, Babylon the Great. Okay? And this is going to work right alongside with his technology, his technocracy, okay, his medical system, and it's all going to be revered as salvation. And if you're not down with any facet, if you're not down with every single facet, of these things that make up the beast system, well, you're going to be deemed, okay, as a terrorist. You see, and this doctrine and this testimony that Yahweh Shemashah has given us attacks each and every single last component, okay, of Esau's system. It attacks his medical system. Okay, this testimony shows that Esau's medical system is flawed and is based upon wickedness and Satanism. Same thing with his politics. Okay, the technology, how it's all ultimately in rebellion, is predicated upon rebellion against Yahweh Shemashah. See? Let's read verse 2 again. For he flattereth himself in his own eyes. See that? I'm the chosen one. This is God's country. God bless America. They swear in on the Bible. Hey, but this time Trump came into the office, he didn't put his hand on the Bible. Letting you know he's about to do some very hellacious things, man. And he's showing unto you that they don't believe in this book, man. It says, until his iniquity be found to be hateful. All right. Until his iniquity be found to be hateful. Right. And the prophets is searching these things out, showing you that he's using all these things as a disguise to basically cover up his wickedness. But he's being found out. Every nook and cranny. Let's grab that in Jeremiah 49th chapter. Every nook and cranny of Esau is being searched out by the candle of the Lord, which is, okay, the spirits of the prophets, man. Jeremiah chapter 49. I believe it's the way it has it worded here. It says every nook and cranny. Yeah, we'll just Google it. Google was created for the prophets. So was ChatGPT. All these things, because at the end of the day, hey, scripture says, these things are good for the godly, but they're turned unto wickedness, for the ungodly, or the ungodly turns it into wickedness. So, we're using these things, for righteousness' sake. But let me find this out real quick. Nook and cranny. It's Obadiah 6. Obadiah chapter 6 and verse, just one verse. Also like it one chapter. So Obadiah 1-6 NLT says, every nook and cranny of Edom. All right. What's a cranny? A small, narrow space or opening, a crack, a chink. Man. Hey, you may hear El Yashawamba. Okay. He speaks about how Esau has chinks in his armor. See? He's looked at and revered in the sight of the whole world as some, just a powerhouse that's undefeatable. See, but the prophets is showing and putting the spotlight on the chinks in his armor, man. You see, he's not really all cracked up as he seems to be, and these little chinks in Esau's armor is going to be his downfall. Just as Goliath, you can read the description of Goliath in 1 Samuel chapter 17. How the end of his spear weighed, it had a lot of weight to it. He was clothed with the coats of mail. It was like a chain linked armor. He was suited up from head to toe. Okay, but that rock, that rock, found out that chink in his armor, had that little small opening, and struck him on the forehead, man. And that was his downfall. So Esau, he can be suited up, ready for war, ready for battle. He got the best weaponry, but there's chinks in his armor. And that's what the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai has been revealed. And that's going to be his downfall. Obadiah 1-6 in the NLT. Every nook and cranny of Edom will be searched and looted. And who's searching it? The prophets, man. All right. And these nations are going to loot. Ultimately, Yahweh Shai, man. All the spoils of all these nations are going to come into Israel. It says every treasure will be found and taken. All right. So let's go ahead and go here to to this article. Once again, it's off of endtimeheadlines.org. It says rejecting church and state separation is on the wish list for Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. All right. They're blending all these things together, man. Once again, this is a part of what makes up the image of the beast. And it's going to culminate, all right, to the N to the W to the O. See, and you got to be down. You got to be down with this system, man. See, and they're going to push forth that chip underneath the guise of religion, okay, science, the benefit for mankind, okay, the economy as it goes into buying and selling, all right. And the elect has separated from all these facets of Esau, man, separated from his medical system. Now the Lord is teaching us about the herbs, okay, separated from his political system, that bipartisan system, having two horns like a lamb, but he spake out. We separated from that. Of course, we separated from his religion. We used to be caught up in these churches, these different philosophies, different denominations, but now we're trusting in Yahweh by Shema Shai. All right. It says, according to a report from the Associated Press, President Donald Trump's Religious Liberty Commission is preparing recommendations after more than a year of hearings. So we're going to let you know that this has been in the talks, man. This is something else that's brewing up. The Lord got a lot of things brewing up simultaneously, man. World War III, data centers, technocracy, changing of the economy, and in the midst of all this, they're talking about incorporating, religion more into politics. See, Esau's not done with religion altogether. Now, as it relates into, that white image of, so-called Jesus or, Caesar Borgia, he's done with that. It's wreaked his havoc upon the tribes, but he's not going to let it go. He's not going to let religion go, okay, because he's using that as a tool and as a weapon. You see? And once again, you're going to hear, like Elder Apostle Hart goes into all the time, you're going to hear from a lot of these churches, here very soon, bringing up Romans the 13th chapter, which we're going to read that here in a second. And they're going to, use Romans the 13th chapter, as well as a few other scriptures that they're going to use to pretty much say, tell their congregation, hey, if you're not, down with what the government is doing, well, you're against the Lord. You're against your God. You see? And we see how Esau here lately has been really, coercing, these religious leaders, even when it comes to the talk to these, the chariots, man. Like, why is the state, okay, why, why is his political system, going to these pastors and telling these pastors that how they need to break down what these UFOs are? Because they don't want the truth to come out. You see? So it's showing you the type of influence that, okay, the state has on the church already. So all you Negroes are still stuck in these churches, man. You're super lost in the sauce. And a lot of these Israelite camps as well, as they led you back to the state, okay, in 2020, to go get that dragon juice, having you trust in this man's science, okay, his medical system, such as IGPK. They say, well, God gave the white man this technology, this science. Go get that dragon juice. You see? So what does that mean? That they're still trusting, okay, in the image of the beast, which that goes to show, man, if you don't repent, you're not a part of the elect. Revelation 13:8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So if you're not part of the elect, okay, if your name is not found written in the Lamb's book of life, well, you're going to worship Esau in some shape, form, or fashion. And this ain't nothing new. You see, as we made mention of earlier in the Roman in the Greco-Roman time period, okay, those emperors, they were worshipped and they were revered as gods, man. See, and Yahweh Shai, as he addressed, some of his churches, such as, the church of Pergamos. Let's go here to Revelation 2. All right, the churches, they were living during a time period to where emperor worship was heavy. You see, and how the god of healing, the god of Asclepius, and Venus and Dionysus, and if you didn't get down with that, if you weren't down with with Esau's gods and worshiping Esau, worshiping these emperors, okay, where you were tortured, such as Antipas. Let's read this, Revelation chapter 2:12. So this is what's coming, man. Jake think that this is a game. That you're just gonna be wiggling down here in Babylon the Great forever, paying fucking $5 a gallon for gas. It's just gonna be like this forever. America, Iran, Israel, they're gonna be warring together forever. No, man, the Lord is wrapping this shit up. And that which was is that which shall be done. There is no new thing under the sun. See? So these things are happening all over again. So great destruction and terror is coming. I'm going to read the title of the lesson again. Religion, science, medicine, and politics plus Esau equals disaster, man. So that these are all things that he's using and culminating more in his kingdom right now. More religion, more science, more. What did Sleepy Joe say? Science. Oh, man. How did he? Let me see. Give me 1 second. Oh, he said less government and more science. Yeah, look at this. I just typed in less government and more science. It says less government, more science is a political and policy perspective. Yeah. The idea of less government and more science reflects a growing political and cultural push to reduce the role of federal oversight in favor of science-driven decision-making, often championed by conservative and libertarian-leaning groups. See that? So, this goes right into what we're speaking about. And I forgot about this. The Spirit just brought it to, my remembrance. But you see how they're incorporating more science, and as we're going into in this lesson, okay, they're pushing to incorporate more religion. See, so through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, starting with our apostles and the men on down, we got the breakdown of Revelation 13, because all these things has everything to do with what makes up the image of the beast. They're bringing Rome back, except this time it's with technology, and it's going to lead to the MOTB. This is serious stuff, man. So why these other camps not pushing this, bro? Because they're not the true witnesses. Okay, because if you're a true witness, Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14 and 25 in the NLT. A truthful witness saves lives, but a false witness is a traitor. See that? This is why they can't bring it out, because they're traitors, man. Okay, here at the very end, Jake is they done sold you out. You see? They sold you out, man. And so what comes along with that? Okay, they got to switch up the doctrine. So they're false witnesses, man. See, but the Lord has reserved unto himself 7,000 men which refuse to bow the knee to this man's system. Okay, and they're pushing forward this word, man. They're true witnesses. So they're saving lives out here through the Spirit. Okay, which is ultimately the elect that's being brought into the fold, man, by the hearing of this word. But let's go back. I'll read a little bit more in this overview. It says, concerning less government and more science, it says this vision contrasts with the traditional bipartisan model of government. See that? What you read about in Revelation 13, having two horns like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon. They're being unified underneath the banner of science, underneath the banner of religion, underneath the banner of technology. You see? New world order, one world government. See? To make the world one, everybody has to be underneath this banner, this image, which ultimately an image is what? An idol. So all this is ultimately an idol, man, that's leading you to a pseudo salvation, which is going to be destruction, man. It says this vision contrasts with traditional bipartisan model of government funding and regulating science, which has long supported biomedical research, environmental monitoring, and public health initiatives. And just look at Trump's cabinet. You know, his lineup. You see, you got men that has high influence as regards into the tech world. You know, Paula White is getting a lot of shine. His religious advisory board. You got Sam Altman. You got what's the other guy's name? Salakia. I can't remember the other guy's name. He plays a prominent role, in this technocracy. Maybe if a brother can remember. Man, it totally escapes me right now. But yeah, man, look at Trump's panel. Each and every individual that's a part of his cabinet, they help to push forward, all these particular facets that we're talking about. So I'm gonna read a little bit here on this article, some more. It says, according to a report from the Associated Press, President Donald Trump's Religious Liberty Commission is preparing recommendations after more than a year of hearings, with members advancing a series of policy changes that emphasize expanded religious expression and exemptions. See, now they're saying, we want you to, be free to express, your religious beliefs, so, we'll give you, the government will allow particular exemptions or whatnot, for your beliefs. But this is just all, a cover up for his mischievousness and his iniquity. That's it. The water, blood priest, Ayashama. Yeah, Larry Ellison and Peter Thiel. That's the one I was thinking about, is Peter Thiel, and Larry Ellison as well, Alex Karp, and these are individuals that, you should at least have some type of working knowledge about. You ain't got to know about them in detail, but just lets you know where this thing is headed. So 2 + 2 = 4 all day. All right. So we see exactly, okay, where Esau is taking this. Well, ultimately where Yahweh by Shemal Shah is taking this thing, man. All right. Yeah, the water. All right. Yeah, brother Atazawam, put it up as well. Yeah, Peter Thiel, the water. Okay, so let's go here to Revelation 2. We're about to bring it up. I forgot to get into it. Revelation 2 and 12, message to Pergamum. All right. Yahushua had a message for each of his 7 churches, which in the spirit, These churches are back, you know. But and we've been going into it in our Sunday classes, the Akim, we have Sunday classes, and we here lately we've been going to this series, about the seven churches, and it's been very edifying. And the Spirit, just as the Spirit was speaking to the churches back then, okay, the same things, the same sentiments being echoed in the Spirit right now to the churches. But let's read this as it pertains to the church of Pergamos. Revelation 2:12. And to the angel of the church in Pergamos write, these things saith he which had the sharp sword with two edges. Let's go into this word Pergamos, which this was a city, all right, in modern day Turkey, okay, Asia Minor. Pergamos.
Strong's G 4010. Pergamos. Pergamos.
All right. It says height or elevation. It was situated on a hill, and also in the spirit, they were very puffed up in their pride. They were heightened in their pride, because of these so-called medical advancements, But let's read. It says a city of Mysia Minor in Asia Minor, the seat of the dynasties of Attalus and Eumenes, and they helped to bring forth, ultimately, or they helped to build. They built what's that? The temple of Zeus. Okay. It says famous for its temple of Asclepius and the invention and manufacture of parchment. And you get this word Asclepius, or the name Asclepius. It says it is a Roman god of medicine and healing, equivalent to the Greek god Asclepius, symbolizing health, rejuvenation, and medical knowledge. See, all this was incorporated within the Roman Empire. But this was religion, but it was incorporated within the Roman Empire. You see? And simultaneously, you had the worship of, Roman emperors. Okay. And these things was affecting the church. You had some of the church, they were standing stiffly for the names of Yahweh Bashemal Shah, such as Antipas, the Lord's faithful martyr. Okay. And, reports has it to where, he was tortured in a bronze bull. They put him inside of a bronze hollow bull, and they had a fire lit underneath that bull to where it just baked them alive. See, but then you had some of the church, they were falling away. They were slipping as, they were being infiltrated from the inside out, from wicked Israelites, the camp of the Nicolaitans. That was a camp. You see, the Genesis camp. That was Genesis. Who knows? But anyway, so this is a facet, if you will, to what was predominating, back then. They were worshiping this, man. So this is what Esau is bringing up here in these times. I want to it was something else I had. Give me 1 second. When you look at that emblem, for Asclepius, it's the famous EMS sign, with that rod. Let me see if I can type in a rod of Asclepius. Yeah, I'm sure we've all seen this. Okay. You got it on the back of ambulance, or on the side of ambulances. You got it in the hospitals. See, and this is just the left hand trying to mimic the right hand. See, because when you read the book of Numbers, chapter 21, okay, when Jake was getting towed up, okay, by them fiery serpents in the wilderness, where the Lord commanded Moses to, get a bronze, staff with a bronze serpent, intertwined, and to lift it up. But that was to symbolize, or to foreshadow the healing that Yahweh Shah would bring. That's why when you read John chapter 3, it says, as Moses lifted up the staff in the wilderness. Okay, that's how Yahweh Shah, is to come. You're supposed to look upon Yahweh Shah for healing. See, but Esau, as he is the left-handed side of the Most High, he's used this, for wickedness, for wickedness sakes, man. See? And people worship this. People, worship Esau's medical system, his religious system. I want to get a little bit in this commentary for Revelation 2. And I'm going to read verse 13, and then we'll get a little bit of commentary. We're going to wrap it up in a second. It says, verse 13, he says, I know thy works and where thou dwellest, even Satan's seat, even where Satan's seat is, meaning it was just a hub of wickedness. So a lot of idolatry, a lot of corruption. It says, and thou holdest fast my name and has not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them, Salakia, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel. You have to have, knowledge about that as you read Numbers, the 22nd chapter, through Numbers, the 25th chapters, goes into that. Now the king of Moab, Balak hired out, Balaam, to pretty much curse the children of Israel in the form of, trying to get them caught up in idolatry, because they couldn't confront Israel at that time militarily, because Yahweh Shah, the angel, he was just wiping out our enemies before us, man. Because at that time we were obeying the Lord, we was connected with our power. So these heathens, they knew the only way to get a victory over these Israelites, we got to get them caught up into sin. We got to get them caught up into idolatry, man. You see? But, but this is what Yahweh Shah is saying right here, verse 14, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam. You had Jake getting caught up into this idolatry that Rome was pushing out during this time, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols and to commit fornication. Because it's bigger than just eating, because along with eating these things that was sacrificed to idols, it came with particular acts that you had to do, bestiality, morality, sodomization, all different types of wicked things. But you had Jakes that was pushing that, man. So has thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. See, and the Nicolaitan, let's read this in the NLT. In a similar way, you have some Nicolaitans among you who follow the same teaching, right? Just like today in these times, man. Okay, these are the camps that's causing Israel or influencing Israel to eat things offered into idols, such as that dragon juice. Okay, they can be linked into modern day Nicolaitans or Nigolations. That's what they are. Okay, you influencing Jake, man, to get that dragon juice. Well, I took it so you don't be scared. You see, that's what the Nicolaitans was doing, leading Jake back into Rome, unto Rome's science, unto Rome's medicine, unto Rome's political system. See, like the Herodians, man. So it ain't nothing new. But real quick, I want to get this commentary. This is a David Gusick commentary for Revelation 2. He did a pretty good job, a real good job, as a matter of fact. Down here, verse 12. All right. It says the character. It says Yahweh Shah's letter to the church of Pergamos. The character of the city of Pergamos. Says Pergamos, this was the political capital of the Roman province of Asia, the less. When John wrote, Pergamos had been the capital city of the region for more than 300 years. The city was a noted center for culture and education, having one of the great libraries of the ancient world with more than 200,000 volumes. Pergamos, this was also an extremely religious city. It had, so now check this out. What comes along with, Esau bringing out religion. It said it had temples to the Greek and Roman gods, Dionysus, Athena, Demeter, and Zeus. It also had 3 temples dedicated to the worship of the Roman emperor. See, and you see that spirit, okay, coming back, man. The spirit of, emperor worship. See, the way they just bigging up Trump and Trump bigging up himself. There's a reason why the spirit is coming back. And it's going to come with a lot of persecution too. It says some 50 years before Smyrna won the honor of building the first temple to Tiberius, the city of Pergamos won the right to build the first temple to worship Caesar Augustus in the province of Asia. This city was especially known as a center for the worship of the deity known as Asclepios. See? All right. And once again, Esau has brought, this deity back, okay, in his medical system. As we just showed you the symbol of it. Okay, the serpent, intertwined around the staff. You see that in every hospital, every ambulance. See? So these gods are back. And these are some of the things that makes up the image of the beast. It's not just a picture of Caesar Borgia for these remedial camps. It's way bigger than that, man. His science, his technology. See, the technology that Esau has now, he didn't have this in Rome back then. See? But this is Rome 2.0. So what do you think they're going to do? Okay, with all these things incorporated with the technology, they want to put it inside of you, man. It says represented by a serpent, and I wonder why. Because he's the serpent. It says Asclepios was the god of healing and knowledge. There was a medical school at his temple in Pergamos. Because of the famous temple to the Roman god of healing, sick and diseased people from all over the Roman Empire flocked to Pergamos for relief. Sufferers were allowed to spend the night in the darkness of the temple. In the temple, there were tame snakes. So it was snakes that was tamed. They were trained. They weren't going to bite you. It says in the night, the sufferer might be touched by one of these tame and harmless snakes as it glided over the ground on which he lay. The touch of the snake was held to be the touch of God himself. And the touch was held to bring health and healing. See, in these times, the serpent is promising you health and healing. See, so this is where all this is going to lead into. We just today's lesson, we were just kind of emphasizing just one aspect of it. How Esau is, talking on, bringing religion back. I accidentally clicked out of that article. Let me go back. So yeah, this is we're living in some very exciting times, man. And there's a lot to watch out for. That's why Yahushua said, watch and pray. Watch as well as pray, man. You see, there's a lot of things to be on the lookout for. That's why the Lord has, this ministry operating the way he does. All hands are on deck. Some brothers may cover one aspect of, what this devil's doing. Another brother may cover that, but at the end of the day, the church is being edified. We're watching. Esau think he's slick, man, but you've been searched out. So, I made mention of it, how they're going to start to, you're going to hear Romans the 13th chapter being brought up, obey the government. Let's read that real quick. Romans 13 and 1 in the NLT. Everyone must submit to governing authorities. This is going to be, and this was read too. And during the time of that 2020, that sea monster, churches, actually brought this out. You see? And this right here, this is the blending of church and state. It makes me think of that movie, the Book of Eli. How those Edomites, they wanted that book. They wanted the Bible. He says, if you got this, man, the people, they'll just believe whatever you say. They know that, it's power, man. You can have a lot of leverage over people. See? If you blend your, the politics along, with, the religion aspect, and that's what they're getting ready to do, along with the technology and the science and medicine. It says, for all authority comes from the Most High, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by the Most High. And that's true. Trump, and not just Trump, but the elites themselves, they've been placed They've been placed in those positions by Yahweh Bashmal Shah to perform the Lord's will on the left-hand side, to bring forth the kingdom ultimately, man. See? All right. But we obey the government as it pertains to paying our taxes. See, that's why the Pharisees tried to trip Yahweh Shah up. What do you think about paying your taxes unto Caesar? Yahweh Shah says, give unto Caesar what's Caesar's. So brothers, we're law-abiding citizens. We got our driver's licenses. We pay our taxes. We stop at red lights. But when this man, brings out decrees that's ultimately against the decrees of Yahweh Bashmal Shah, that's when, okay, we draw that line in the sand. Okay, that Acts chapter 5 and 29 has to be executed. Acts chapter 5 and 29. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey the Most High rather than men. See? And that's where the elect draws a line at. See? But Esau is going to deem those that's not down with the MOTB, all right, as domestic teas and enemies of the state. See? I had some stuff here on the chat GPT I wanted to get into, but I just typed in how the mark of the beast mixes church and state together, and it gave pretty good synopsis of it. Everything, like Elder Apostle Hart says all the time, all roads lead to the MOTB. Whether it's the road, you're on the road of religion, you're on the road of science, technology, medicine, is all going to lead you to the MOTB. See? So yeah, man, we'll leave it right there. I got to go ahead and make a move. I didn't know it was this late. Ate the water, man. I really wish I could grab some of these scriptures the brothers put up. These are great scriptures. The water Akim, So for the listeners, be sure to look at the comment board, for these precepts the brothers put up. But I believe the point was made. Lord's willing, it was edifying to the hopeful elect. All right, but until next time, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to my power, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Hakodash. I want to give double honor to my beloved apostle, Elder Great Millstone, Mawaf Lababal, Shalom.